Hello there, and this is a video covering one of my favorite topics in Star Trek, the Mirror Universe, specifically the different alternative versions of it that exist. I felt I needed to clear up the timeline a little bit, as there is a lot of confusion out there as to exactly what fits into exactly what timeline and what the Mirror Universe actually is. Now, I've covered the Mirror Universe very extensively, but what you may or may not be aware of is obviously there is more than one continuity of the Mirror Universe. Effectively, you've got the Alpha Canon Mirror Universe, which we'll discuss, and there are Beta Canon Mirror Universes, sort of alternative, alternative, alternate universes. Before we get started, like, share, and subscribe. And let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the Alpha Canon Mirror Universe, and this covers everything from the original Mirror Mirror episode, the first time that Kirk set foot aboard the ISS Enterprise, and the events that led forward from there. This led into, additionally, what we saw in the 24th century, where Smiley O'Brien, Captain Sisko, and others start a rebellion to free Earth after it has been conquered by the Klingon-Cardassian alliance. And the Terran Empire has been basically gone for at least 80 years by this point, something in that realm. We also know that the Empire doesn't necessarily recover, but there is future contact with it up to maybe the 26th, 27th century with the so-called Prime Universe, but as they begin to diverge further, their contact is less and less. This universe also includes what we saw of their version of First Contact, which was where the Vulcans set foot on Earth and Zefram Cochrane killed the first Vulcan to walk off the ship. They then stole all their technology. We also include the time when the rebellion was happening in the mid-22nd century, and we see the Imperial Starfleet's military response to this be utterly trashed until they were aided by the arrival of the USS Defiant, a Constitution-class starship that for various complicated reasons traveled back in time and jumped universes. That is all the Alpha Canon Mirror Universe stuff. Now, for those of you that are going to say, well, what about the Discovery stuff? That is also Alpha Canon. All the events we saw with Empress Georgiou, Captain Lorca, the ISS Charon, the Buran, the ISS Discovery, all of that is the same universe. I know some people like to think it's perhaps a different continuity, but actually no. That's all part of the same continued Terran universe. Whether we like it or not, personally, love it. I love all things Mirror Universe. But it is all part of the same continuity, but there are other versions. So there is the so-called Dark Universe, as it is sometimes referred to. The Dark Universe is another Imperial military continuity. It continued on till at least the 24th century. Now, this effectively got retconned out of existence when Deep Space Nine did its crossover episodes, because up until that point, these books had existed that actually took the TNG crew, one of the few Star Trek universe crews who never went into we never saw the Mirror Universe versions of them properly. We saw their versions, their Captain Picard, their Riker, their Geordi, their Data, or Lore, as I actually think it may have been. But effectively, we see the ISS Stargazer in that universe, the ISS Enterprise. All these ships exist in that universe, but the Empire didn't fall in the late 23rd century. It carried on and is still thriving in the 24th. Now, I'm personally, I admit, not a huge fan of that particular book series, because that's all that exists in books and comics and things like that. But that is its own continuity. It doesn't really get continued, but it is a so-called Dark Universe where the Empire has just persisted on into the 24th century. There is another universe, of course, the Star Trek Online. Star Trek Online is quite well regarded as its own continuity. It takes elements from the shows. Every time something new comes in, you get the characters, the ships, and it filters it into its own continuity. But the Star Trek Online is effectively an alternative universe to the primary universe. Although it shares many of the characters and events, it's not the same. And it's the same with the mirror universe there. That mirror universe is not the same mirror universe that we interact with. It has its own continuity, its own events, its own future. We see things like the Borg collective of that universe. We see that the ISS Discovery continued on to exist in that universe. We see lots of invasions and crossover events taking place that simply don't take place in the Prime universe or in the Prime mirror universe continuity. So that is a third type. Now, the fourth type, the fourth alternative universe, is an alternate Kelvin timeline. It exists in comic book form at the moment, and basically the events that take place there are in the 23rd century. They're really similar to the main universe. The Narada arrives and is confronted by not the United Federation of Planets Starfleet, but they basically pop out and go, yeah, we're here from the future, we're going to kick your butt. And what actually happens is they've run into the Imperial Starfleet, and they just get their asses utterly handed to them. And the Terrans, well, they're a different breed, aren't they? And that's the four different continuities. Now, there are, of course, many fan fictions, graphic novels, and variations, but effectively those are the four primary alternative versions to the United Federation of Planets. The main one, of course, is the one we see in the shows that is in Discovery, the original series, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. There are no alternative versions. We ever see a Voyager. The closest we got was a so-called warship Voyager that many people like to think would be what the Terran version of Voyager would be like. And personally, I can kind of see it. Yeah, I can see a Terran version of Janeway behaving like that and doing that. But effectively, yeah, that is all the same continuity. And then, as I said, you've got the Dark Universe that does carry on, has Janeway and everything. And then there is the Kelvin timeline and the Star Trek Online. The two biggest, of course, are the Star Trek Online and Prime ones that we see. Those are the two biggest. And just to throw it in there, of course, we have seen another alternative version, which is the Confederacy. But the Confederacy is not the Terran Empire, as in defined by calling themselves Terrans, by having the symbol of the Earth as a sword through it. All of those continuities are splinters of the same timeline, which is the one we know and love, which was first encountered by Captain James Tiberius Kirk and co. when they hopped universes by accident and went aboard the ISS Enterprise. So there we have it. I just wanted to clear up the timelines. Let me know in the comment section below if you knew about all these. I know the Kelvin timeline one is a little obscure. I actually was having a conversation with another YouTuber about this recently, and she didn't know it existed. And someone else I was talking to as well, randomly about Star Trek, as I often do, also didn't know it existed. And it's actually a pretty cool story. I highly advise you check it out. It's in a graphic novel format. It's very cool and very violent, but very, very cool. With all that said, if you made it to the end of this video, I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, and bye-bye.